Lenten Thoughts, Day 35, Tuesday of Passion Week. The Jewish Feast of Tabernacles was near. The Feast of Tabernacles was one of the principal feasts of the Jews. It was celebrated on the 15th day of the 7th month, and it lasted for 7 full days, during which the whole people were required to dwell in tents made of tree branches, in remembrance of the tents they had once lived in during their time in the desert, and to give thanks to God for having settled them in a fertile and comfortable land. This is why it was called the Feast of Tabernacles, that is, the Feast of Tents. The Son of God was present at this feast with a very different spirit and intention than that of the Jews. Without doubt, it was to teach all Christians that they must consider themselves on earth as travelers, who have neither home nor homeland, according to this oracle of the apostle. We have here no lasting city. This led St. John Chrysostom to say that the first virtue, and even the entire virtue of a Christian, consists in seeing himself on earth as a pilgrim and a stranger. The first virtue, indeed the whole of virtue, is to be a stranger and pilgrim on earth. I note 2 things in the heart of a traveler as he journeys along his way. First, a great detachment from all the places he passes through. Second, a deep desire for the destination he hopes to reach. These same 2 attitudes must be found in the heart of a Christian during all the time he is a traveler on earth. First, he must have a great contempt and detachment from everything in this world. Second, he must have a burning desire for the heavenly homeland, which is the goal of his journey. Such were the sentiments of the prophet King David when he said, "Lord, I have desired nothing on earth. Heaven has always been the object of my longing. What have I in heaven but you? And what on earth could I desire apart from you?" Such are also the sentiments of a true Christian who considers himself a pilgrim. First point, the true servants of God have always considered themselves as strangers and pilgrims on the earth. All the saints, says St. Paul, died in faith, continually hoping for the good things God had promised them, and confessing that they were strangers and travelers in this world. All these died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them from afar and greeted them, confessing that they were strangers and pilgrims upon earth. The patriarch Jacob spoke of his life as a pilgrimage. The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years, few and evil. The prophet King David said the same thing. I am a stranger and a sojourner, like all my fathers before me. Solomon likewise said, our time is a passing. St. Peter frequently exhorted his disciples to consider themselves as people just passing through this world. I urge you, as strangers and pilgrims, to abstain from fleshly desires. As long as we are in the body, says St. Paul, we are away from the Lord, and it is God who prepares us for this very thing. These are, according to St. Gregory the Great, the usual sentiments of all the just. They are in the good things of this world like a traveler in a bed. He is eager to leave to continue his journey. If he pauses, it is only to move forward more effectively. If his body rests, his soul continues to press on towards its goal. He does not seek pleasure, lest anything detain him. He is attached to nothing, so nothing may delay him. Thus should a Christian behave during this life, which is nothing but a journey to heaven. He uses the comforts of this world like a traveler uses a bed at an inn. He rests, but he hastens to continue on. His body pauses, but his mind presses forward. They may even endure adversity willingly and flee from prosperity in passing things, lest the pleasure of the journey diverts them from reaching their homeland. They do not anchor the steps of their heart in the road of the pilgrimage, so that they might at last reach the vision of their heavenly homeland without delay. We have 3 kinds of dwellings in this world, which all remind us that we are only strangers here. First, the world itself, which surrounds us. Second, our earthly homes. And thirdly, our body, which can be called the house of the soul. The world, which is a stage of change and upheaval, already teaches us that we are not meant to remain here. Scripture assures us that the world will one day perish, and since our soul can never perish, it must have another dwelling. We have no lasting city here, but we seek the one to come. As for the houses we inhabit, we are, despite our attachments, forced to consider ourselves guests, says St. Augustine. Everyone is a guest in his own home. If we were not strangers, we would remain there forever. But since we cannot remain there forever, it proves that we are only passing through. If he is not a guest, he would not pass on. If he is to pass on, then he is a guest. All the predestined must consider themselves, like the patriarch Abraham, father of all the faithful. The apostle says he lived in the land promised to him as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were to inherit the same promise. He stayed in the land of promise as a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. Why did Abraham find nothing on earth to hold him back? The apostle answers, for he looked for a city with foundations. That is to say, he was waiting for heaven, whose foundations are eternal. It is therefore true that the world has no solid foundation on which we can establish our happiness. It has nothing that can sustain or support us. Only heaven offers a dwelling with a stable foundation. That is why God has declared that all who consider themselves inhabitants of this world shall be miserable. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on earth. Woe to you who sleep on ivory beds and revel on your couches, who eat lambs from the flock and calves from the herd, who sing idle songs to the sound of the harp. They thought all this would last and not pass away. Woe to you who sleep in your beds as if they were places of eternal rest, who indulge and feast in this world without ever reflecting that it is passing and that you are passing with it. The error of worldly people, says St. John Chrysostom, is not precisely in taking some enjoyment on earth, but in doing so as if it were to last forever, and in making it their whole happiness. They thought these things would remain, not that they were fleeting. O world, cries the great Saint Augustine, how treacherous you are. You promise good things and only give evil. You promise life and give death. You promise rest and you bring only trouble and confusion. You promise flowers and offer only thorns. Our body, which is the dwelling place of our soul, tells the soul clearly through its own miseries that it will not remain there long. It is a house of clay. They dwell in houses of clay. It is a house so ruinous that it begins to collapse as soon as it is built. We know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. From this, we must conclude that God is preparing for our soul another dwelling, one worthy of its dignity and proportion to its eternity. In other words, a dwelling that is eternal. But earthly things are found only in heaven, so it is heaven that is the true end of our journey. Let us conclude with St. Augustine. By the very nature of physical birth, man is essentially a traveler, for he is born into a place and a condition from which death forces him to depart. Every man becomes a pilgrim by being born, because he is compelled to move on by dying. This corruptible body is not properly the home of our soul, but its tabernacle, like the tents and shelters that serve as lodging for those journeying through deserts. That is why our souls groan and long unceasingly for that heavenly and eternal dwelling. While we are in this earthly tent, we groan under its weight, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling. Blessed, then, is the Christian who expects no happiness on earth, who regards the world as a vast inn, where he lodges only in passing until he arrives at blessed eternity. Second point. It is not enough to despise the world as a place of passage. One must also continually desire heaven, which is the place of our eternal rest. This desire produces two effects in the soul of a true Christian. One, a kind of holy longing, which causes the soul to become insensible to all created things and to live in constant affliction until it possesses God. Why are you sad, O my soul, and why do you trouble me? A reminder that these are the words we say at the beginning of every Holy Mass. The great Saint Augustine answers this question in the voice of his own soul. I trouble you because I am not yet in the place where I will find the one true object of all my desires. How can you be surprised that I trouble you when I am a stranger and far from the house of my God? The holy man Job, speaking of the time when he was considered happy, said he lived in sorrow. I walked in sadness. Who among worldly people, asked St. Gregory, would not have believed that this prince was perfectly happy since he possessed everything he could desire on earth? Yet the sorrow that burdened him teaches us this lesson. When one has God in view and realizes how far one is from Him, one becomes indifferent to everything else and capable of no consolation. Who, he says, would not have thought Job was happy amid so many blessings, health of body, life of children, safety of household, abundance of goods? And yet he says, I walked in sadness, because in all this he did not rejoice, for the holy man, still a pilgrim on earth, considered it poverty to be surrounded by abundance if he could not see God. Those whom God has chosen often groan, because even when everything else is present, the one thing they long for is missing, the Creator of all. Let us then continually say with David, Alas, how long is my exile? I dwell among the inhabitants of this dark world. My soul has been a stranger for far too long. The second effect of the desire for heaven in a Christian is that it compels him to work constantly to merit it and obtain it. Alas, people do for the world what they should be doing for heaven. They desire nothing but the world. They are afflicted only over matters of the world, and they work only for the world. With what face could you return to your heavenly homeland, you who never once longed for it? With what face can one return to their homeland if one never sighed for it while away? Will a Christian, enlightened by the light of faith, who never sighted after heaven, his true homeland, dare to present himself after death to be admitted there? One must have desired it in order to enter it. One must have wept, groaned, and sighed during this mortal life. One must have labored constantly, or else one loses all right to it. Ah, is it not enough to be banished from paradise in this life? Must one also be deprived of it for all eternity? Amen. Help us at gofundme.com/restore-immaculate. Thank you for your Lenten generosity. May God bless you.